My sister was determined to become a legitimate daughter and was finally adopted by the first madam. However, the first madam had a dull personality. She only taught my sister how to manage accounts and never showed any understanding of how to win her husband's favor. On the other hand, I, who had been raised by my stepmother, was talented in both singing and dancing, and every young man in the capital admired me. The young marquis, whom my sister had longed for, fell in love with me. Even when his mother came to visit, she said, "Legitimate or illegitimate, it doesn't matter. What matters most is that my son is happy." In her madness, my sister killed me, and we both returned to the day I was adopted. This time, she hid behind our father. I don't want to be adopted by the first madam. I would rather follow Lady Zhao. I quickly rushed forward and hugged the first madam's legs. In this life, it was finally my turn for good fortune. After the death of Lady Song from the Shin family, 2 illegitimate daughters were left behind. My sister, Shen Wanrong, and me, Shen Wanning. At this moment, we stood on either side of my father, with our legitimate mother, Madame Shen, across from us. My father said, "Madam, these 2 girls have no mother, and they are pitiful. How about you take one of them to live with you? I know your health isn't good, and taking care of both might be too much. Since Lady Zhao has no children, we can have her care for the other one." Before he finished speaking, my sister had already grabbed my father's sleeve. "Father, I want to follow Lady Zhao." My father was stunned. He had always favored my sister and knew that her pride was the highest. Now, she was rejecting the opportunity to be adopted by the first madam and instead wanted to go to Lady Zhao. "Ronger, what are you?" he began. My sister quickly interrupted. "Father, I've made up my mind. Please let the first madam adopt my sister." After saying that, she hurried off to Lady Zhao's courtyard, clearly in a rush, as if afraid that things wouldn't settle immediately. As she passed me, she secretly gave me a smile. "This time, you can be the one to suffer as the legitimate daughter." I knew why Shen Wanrong said that. In the last life, she had been determined to become the legitimate daughter and rushed into the first madam's embrace. But once she entered the first madam's courtyard, she realized how naive she had been. Though the first madam was the official wife, she had no affection for my father, and the whole courtyard was cold and empty. The first madam herself had no way of competing for my father's love. She didn't even make an effort, spending her days in the Buddhist hall meditating. Shen Wanrong, following the first madam, was strictly disciplined. She was woken up early by the servants, washed, dressed, and sent to the women's academy in the capital to attend lessons with a teacher. After returning, she wasn't allowed to rest. The first madam would personally supervise her as she studied how to manage the accounts, day in and day out, until nightfall. Shen Wanrong suffered terribly. Especially when she was overwhelmed by accounts, I was out with Lady Zhao, enjoying plays at the theater. When she suffered from hand cramps while writing, Lady Zhao would take me out for spring outings and kite flying. Not to mention, when we were older and attended gatherings of young ladies and gentlemen in the capital, I was dressed up by Lady Zhao in glamorous clothes, skilled in both singing and playing the guzheng. The young lords and sons of noble families all admired me, calling me the most beautiful girl in the capital. Meanwhile, Shen Wanrong was ignored. She had no talents, and the things the first madam taught her were useless in such settings. Luckily, Shen Wanrong still had the advantage of being a legitimate daughter when it came to matchmaking. So, when she fell in love with the young marquis from the Xianping marquis household, she starved herself and knelt before the first madam, pleading, "Mother, please go to the marquis household and ask for my marriage." The first madam, however, showed no regard for her plea. She calmly said, "You're too young. We'll discuss this later. And your obsession is too extreme. It will lead to trouble. For now, go to the Buddhist hall and copy the Heart Sutra 30 times." While Shen Wanrong was copying scriptures in the Buddhist hall, I was performing the green waist dance at a gathering. Lady Zhao, who was once a dancer, taught me the green waist dance, her signature move. I danced gracefully among the flowers, captivating the hearts of countless young noblemen. It is said that on that day, everyone in the capital fell for me. Even the young marquis, whom Shen Wanrong had been longing for, was moved by my dance. By the time Shen Wanrong finally emerged from the Buddhist hall, the marquis family had already sent a marriage proposal to the Shen household. The one who came to propose was the marquis mother. The old lady smiled kindly. I know the second daughter was raised by her stepmother, but that doesn't matter. I am also a daughter of a concubine, so I don't care about legitimacy. What matters is that my son is happy. Shen Wanrong went mad. She grabbed an oil bucket and rushed into my room, setting a fire that engulfed everything. We both died in the fire and were reborn together. This time, my sister didn't hesitate to choose Lady Zhao. She said to me, "In our Shen family, the title of legitimate daughter is nothing but a joke. You go suffer with that old woman." As for life with the first madam, it was indeed a bitter one. My father favored his concubines and neglected his wife. This was well known throughout the capital. However, in our previous life, we were too young to realize this. Entering the first madam's room felt like stepping into an ice cave. There was no decoration. Apart from a few tables and chairs, there was only a Buddha statue and an incense burner. The first madam, with her eyes closed in prayer, asked me, "Are you disappointed?" In the previous life, with my sister's temperament, she would have shown her disappointment on her face the moment she stepped into the room. Who could have imagined that, as the legitimate wife, after losing favor, her room would be even more austere than the concubines? You see, Lady Zhao's room was decorated in gold and jade, magnificent and imposing, full of flair. I calmly added a piece of agarwood to the incense burner and said, "Daughter believes that a simple room brightens the heart. After all, no matter how much gold and jade you have, nothing compares to the sunlight streaming through the window." At this moment, sunlight quietly spread across the floor of the room. The first madam raised an eyebrow slightly. She turned her gaze toward me, a hint of surprise crossing her eyes. She hadn't expected me to say that. "You're quite an interesting girl," she said lightly. "Well then, since you've decided to follow me, I will teach you. I'm strict, and what I teach may not be to your liking." I lower my hands. "Whatever you teach, madam, I will learn." A mountain of accounts was spread before me, and the abacus was set in front of the desk. The first madam held a ruler in her hand, her expression indifferent. "Focus. If you get distracted more than 3 times, I'll strike your palm." Learning how to manage accounts was indeed tedious. It wasn't like poetry or songs. These numbers made my head spin. Knowing what income was and what expenses were, just keeping track was difficult, let alone analyzing anything from it. I occasionally felt sleepy, and at those times, the first madam's ruler would fall on my palm. It didn't really hurt, but I would still startle awake each time. The first madam put away the ruler and softly asked, "Is it hard for you?" I shook my head, thought for a moment, then nodded. "It is hard." Her eyes darkened. I continued, "But I know that if I don't learn these things, when I marry and become the mistress, people will take advantage of my ignorance and deceive me. That would be much harder. One must endure hardship. I'd rather endure the hardship of learning than the hardship of ignorance." The first madam raised her eyebrows slightly. She was actually a very beautiful woman. Her features still held traces of her youthful elegance. But now, she wore plain clothes and spent her time in prayer, and there was a heavy air of age about her. I actually liked her. Though she was always distant with me, there were times when, during the cold seasons, she would sneak into my room in the middle of the night to adjust my blanket and quietly leave. But my father didn't like her. He rarely visited our courtyard. That evening, my father finally came. He would come once a month to the first madam's place, as a gesture of respect for the legitimate wife. On this day, the servants in the courtyard were all busy with excitement, and the atmosphere was much livelier than usual. However, this time, my father hadn't even been sitting for half an hour when the sound of singing drifted in from outside the courtyard. Like raven feathers, her hair is styled finely, small beads like lotus flowers, her forehead narrow. Fearful that she hasn't finished her grooming, she can't help but stick in a golden hairpin, one side messy, the other side crooked. My father couldn't help but ask the servant, "Who's singing?" The servant replied, "It's Lady Zhao teaching Miss Rong to sing." Moments later, Lady Zhao walked in, her presence accompanied by a fragrant breeze. She was dressed up in bright colors and was holding Xin Wanrong, who was also dressed in dazzling attire. "Xinlang, did you hear Ronger sing? Does she sing better than I did back then?" My father smiled faintly. "I remember when we first met at the lakeside pavilion. You sang this very song." Lady Zhao blushed slightly. "I didn't expect you to remember, Xinlang. My voice isn't what it used to be, but I'm glad I can teach my daughter. Ronger, how about singing again for your father in the room?" Shen Wanrong immediately stepped forward, pulling on my father's sleeve. "Father, both Aunt Zhao and I miss you. There's tea and fruit in the courtyard. Would you listen to me sing while eating?" With her and Lady Zhao flanking him, both smiling charmingly, it wasn't long before my father was led away. The first madam's room was left in complete silence. Several little maids couldn't hide their disappointment. After all, my father only came once a month, and now he had been taken away. "Madam, should we serve the dishes now or wait?" Tonight, many of the dishes had been specially prepared by the small kitchen, knowing that my father was coming. Before the first madam could speak, I stood up. "Serve them, why not?" I said. "If my father won't eat, we will."
What?
"Are you saying that because the man isn't here, we women can't even eat?" "Serve them, serve them. There's the pearl-braised 8 immortals, right? I love that dish. I could eat a whole bowl by myself." The maids were cheered by my words and quickly started bringing out the food. The atmosphere in the room brightened again. The first madam glanced at me and, after a long pause, smiled faintly. "Good girl. You're full of spirit." From then on, the first madam often had the small kitchen prepare the pearl-braised 8 immortals. I ate countless bowls, but still, I didn't see my father again. He practically stayed at Lady Zhao's every day. Whenever something new and delicious or fun came into the household, he would always focus on Lady Zhao and Shen Wanrong first. During the day, when Shen Wanrong saw me, she smiled so widely that her earrings were swaying. "Did you see? What does it matter if you're a legitimate daughter? Whoever has father's heart, that's the one who lives in grandeur and dignity. That old woman of yours is useless. Just wait, you'll end up learning to be a little useless thing from her." She was waiting for me to show a sad expression, but I remained unchanged and replied coldly, "Sister, have you ever thought about this? Little songs like these are only sung by actresses and entertainers. Now that Lady Zhao lets you sing little songs to gain favor, she will only degrade you further in the future." Shen Wanrong's face changed, but in no time, she just laughed. "You're just jealous. Wait and see, you'll have even more suffering ahead." With that, she turned and left. But honestly, I wasn't lying to her. In the last life, Lady Zhao treated me the same way. She taught me to sing, taught me to dance, made me perform various talents for my father. At that time, the only people in the household were the first madam and Lady Zhao. The first madam wasn't favored, and Lady Zhao managed to keep my father with these talents. But later, my father brought in a young and beautiful new concubine, and these talents weren't enough. Lady Zhao had to use other methods. She drugged me, making me vomit and have diarrhea. She smeared pig fat on the floor where I practiced dancing, deliberately causing me to fall and injure myself. When I was sick and hurt, she went to my father, crying pitifully and asking him to come and see me. This was how she kept him. Those years were a nightmare for me. From Lady Zhao, I clearly saw that if a woman relies on a man's love, she will spend her life fighting other women for that love. In the end, there will always be a day when she loses. As for the first madam, she didn't fight, but she didn't lose. In that cold room, the heads of estates and shop owners came and went, and everyone treated her with great respect, not daring to deceive her in the slightest. The maids, servants, and household staff were all orderly, devoted to her. In this new life, I decided I wanted to be such a mistress. So, Shen Wanrong continued to follow Lady Zhao, learning to sing, dance, and show off her charms. Meanwhile, I followed the first madam, learning to manage the accounts and run the household, and I made a new request. Madam, I want to learn to sword fight. The first madam was stunned. There was indeed a sword in her room. From bits and pieces of conversation from the servants, I pieced together her past. She had once been the daughter of a general. At the age of 15, she had taken up a sword and fought through rebel forces to deliver a message to her father and brothers who were trapped in the city. But later, her father died in battle, and her brother, after marrying his sister-in-law, hastily married her off to my father, a fifth-rank civil official. Her past had been covered with dust, and the sword lay quietly gathering dust. In the last life, Ronger was afraid of that sword, but I felt drawn to it. Please, madam, teach me how to sword fight. I looked at the first madam, her face expressionless, and my heart began to feel increasingly nervous. I didn't know whether the sword represented glory or pain for her. After a long silence, she coldly turned around, leaving me with her back. Just when I thought this was a rejection, she called out from a distance, "Come to the courtyard. Show me your horse stance." From that day on, I began practicing swordsmanship with her. We trained in winter's cold and summer's heat. As the seasons changed, I soon grew into a young lady. One day, I was practicing swordplay by the lake. The sword gleamed as it flew through the air, sweeping past the branches of surrounding peach trees. After a moment, all the flower stems fell to the ground, each cut clean and neat. I knew I had succeeded in my practice. Suddenly, there was applause from behind me. I turned quickly and realized that a group of people had quietly arrived behind the rocks. It was a group of young noblemen and ladies out for a spring outing. Among them was my sister, Shen Wanrong. I had to admit, Shen Wanrong was indeed one of the most outstanding young ladies among the prominent families today. She was wearing a peach-colored silk dress, more beautiful than the peach blossoms themselves, and all the young noblemen surrounded her, showering her with attention. This was something she had never experienced in her previous life. However, just as she was nearly floating with joy, the young nobleman noticed me, practicing swordplay by the lake. The young man at the front was the first to comment. There once was a beauty, Gong Sun, who danced with her sword and captivated the world. Now we meet another beauty, and she surpasses Gong Sun. With this, the other nobleman quickly chimed in. No one paid any more attention to Shen Wanrong. She looked at me, her gaze dark and venomous, almost as if it could drown me. That evening, after I returned from sword practice and had just hastily taken a bath, I heard a commotion at the door. Miss Rong's hairpin is missing. Search thoroughly. I walked out, still wiping my wet hair, just as Shen Wanrong, accompanied by a group of maids and servants, came into the room. I looked at her coldly. What's your problem now? She glanced at me, and in a soft voice addressed the people around her. I know my younger sister, Ninger, would never steal my things. But to avoid suspicion, we must search her room as well. The servants were ordered and rushed into my room, rummaging through everything. After a while, someone came out holding the hairpin. Miss, we found it. It was in the second Mrs. Vanity. At that moment, my father, who had just returned from socializing, walked in. Hearing the commotion, he couldn't help but enter the room. What's going on? As soon as he entered, Shen Wanrong began crying. Sister, I know you envy how I, along with Aunt Zhao, am favored more by father. We have good food and fine clothes, but you can't steal my things. This hairpin is a family heirloom of Aunt Zhao's. She was so upset when she found out it was missing. She fainted right on the spot, and she still hasn't regained consciousness. Father, please take care of Aunt Zhao. In the family shrine, several servants were holding me down. My father sat high at the main seat. Beside him was the grieving Zhao aunt and Shen Wanrong, crying. For some reason, when I saw both of them crying in exactly the same way, as if they were cast from the same mold, I found it incredibly funny and couldn't help but laugh out loud. My father flew into a rage. What are you laughing at? You stole something and you're laughing? A daughter like you is ruining the Shin family's reputation. I should beat you to death right now. I raised my head and looked coldly at this man, my blood relative. I had no doubt that he would really dare to kill me. The Shin family would never kill a legitimate daughter, but the truth was, I wasn't the first madam's biological child. My birth mother was just a maid in a side chamber. Furthermore, the first madam had always treated me coldly, and the outside world didn't perceive her as having any affection for me. Lady Zhao, with tears and gasps, clutched her chest. Shinlang, you know this hairpin is a relic left to me by my mother, something from the former dynasty's palace, priceless. In fact, no matter how precious it is, if Ning'e likes it, I will give it to her with both hands. But why would she steal it? If word gets out, the Shun family's reputation will be ruined. What will become of Ronger's marriage? As she spoke, Lady Zhao seemed on the verge of fainting again, and Shun Wanrong hurriedly supported her, trying to steady her. My father stared at me for a long time before coldly saying, "Someone, bring out the family law." According to the family law, stealing warranted 30 strikes with the board. A single strike would leave deep marks, and 30 strikes would either kill or maim a person for life. At this critical moment, a cold voice suddenly came from the doorway. I wonder who dares. The first madam walked in. She usually went to bed early, and at this time, she should have already been resting. I didn't expect her to come. The first madam walked to my side and coldly looked at my father. Lord, even when the government interrogates someone, it's about clear judgment, not directly resorting to punishment without determining the truth. My father's face turned pale. Lady Zhao immediately began crying again. How can there be no distinction of right and wrong? This stolen item was found in Ning'er's room. Are you saying that just because she was raised by the madam will protect her? Lady Zhao wasn't afraid of the first madam. Over the years, my father had favored his concubines and neglected his wife. Lady Zhao always thought that she was the most noble woman in the house. As for my mother, she was just a discarded, unimportant main wife. So, even in a direct confrontation, she wasn't afraid. However, the usually plain-dressed, quiet first madam suddenly turned to look at Lady Zhao. In that instant, she exuded an undeniable authority. Kneel. Lady Zhao froze. The first madam enunciated each word. Such worthless things, take your daughter and kneel together. Lady Zhao turned to my father, seeking help. Shunlang, But my father didn't speak. Instead, he looked pale and stared behind the first madam. There, about 10 strong men stood silently. They didn't enter the room but stood outside, each like a silent iron tower. They were the household guards, men who had accompanied the first madam from the general's household. I noticed them too. In the past, I thought they were just ordinary servants called Uncle Lu and Uncle Li, who would happily respond and even buy me sesame candy. Now, they were all wearing armor, standing silently. Each of them had seen bloodshed on the battlefield. Men of war. My father's hand trembled. He spoke in a trembling voice to Lady Zhao. Madam speaks, and you speak back. Indeed, it's disrespectful. Kneel and apologize. Lady Zhao couldn't believe it, staring at my father. Father, kneel. Lady Zhao shuddered in fear and, unwillingly, pulled Shun Wanrong down to kneel. But she still wasn't giving up. She lifted the hairpin and handed it to the first madam. Madam, this stolen item was truly found in Ning'er's room. It's a family heirloom passed down from my mother, something from the former palace, something that can no longer be bought in the market. The first madam took the hairpin from Lady Zhao's hand, squinted, and examined it carefully. Then, in the next moment, she threw the hairpin to the ground. What a piece of junk. The room fell silent. Everyone was stunned. Lady Zhao had been living with such grandeur in the Shun household for over 10 years, and no one had ever dared to throw her things on the floor. Lady Zhao herself was frozen. She stared at the hairpin on the ground and, for a moment, even forgot to cry. The first madam coldly looked at my father. Lord, do you think my daughter Liu Jieyun, would stoop to stealing such a thing? Seeing my father hesitate and remain silent, the first madam turned around and ordered her maid, Wu Mama, who had accompanied her from the general's household, "Bring me my makeup box." The first madam rarely dressed up. She usually wore simple clothes, with her hair tied up with a wooden hairpin. I didn't even know that she had a makeup box. Wu Mama quickly arrived with 2 young servants, bringing a large sandalwood box. When it was opened, the room was filled with radiant light. My father's new concubine, Lady Meng, who had been a palace maid and had seen much of the world, was the first to exclaim, "Heavens, this is a tribute-grade jade from the western regions. That piece of jade was excavated decades ago. I've only seen such quality in the old imperial concubines collection. And there's coral beads here. These beads can be exchanged for 10 gold ingots in the market. Madam has a whole string of coral bead necklaces." Lady Zhao stood in a daze. Shen Wanrong stared at the box full of rare treasures. Her gaze was filled with confusion, shock, and resentment. In her previous life, after staying by the first madam's side for so many years, she never knew that such treasures were hidden in the cold, empty room. The first madam ignored everyone and turned to me, gesturing for me to come closer. "Come over, pick a few." I was stunned. "Huh?" It took me a moment to react, and I quickly waved my hands. "This is too valuable. I can't accept it." The first madam laughed softly. "You're my daughter. My things will one day be yours to inherit." At that moment, all eyes in the room were on me, filled with admiration. Shen Wanrong glared at me, her gaze full of hatred, almost as though her eyes were bleeding. Lady Zhao's face had already turned ashen, but she still struggled for one last attempt. "Madam, I know that Ninger grew up under your care, and she is of the highest honor, as important as a legitimate daughter. My Ronger cannot compare to her. You want to protect Ninger, and no one dares to defy you. But does that mean that in this vast Shin household, the legitimate daughter can act with impunity, while the lives of concubines and illegitimate daughters are worth nothing?" The first madam turned to look at Lady Zhao, and suddenly, she smiled. Lady Zhao had never been afraid when the first madam was cold and stern, but at that moment, when the first madam smiled, it was a calm, tranquil smile, and Lady Zhao actually shivered. The first madam fixed her gaze on Lady Zhao but spoke to Wu Mama. "Bring her up." Wu Mama understood and turned to leave. A moment later, 2 household guards brought forward a maid with disheveled hair. Shen Wanrong cried out, "Xiaohe!" Lady Zhao fiercely pinched Shen Wanrong, and Shen Wanrong swallowed her words, but her body trembled uncontrollably. She couldn't stop trembling, because the maid named Xiaohe was lying on the ground, her face smeared with blood, her fingers pinned by wooden boards, blood and flesh in tatters. The women in the room screamed in fear and turned away, avoiding looking, but the first madam remained unfazed, speaking in a voice without any fluctuation. This afternoon, Wu Mama saw this maid running around the courtyard, making noise to distract the person on duty. Later, she appeared in the inner chambers, and when she came out, she was seen by a passing servant, looking flustered. I thought something was wrong, so I took the initiative to investigate and asked for the master's permission. This is the statement she signed, and the master can review it. The first madam waved her hand lightly, and Wu Mama handed my father a written statement from Xiaohe, bearing her handprint. As though anticipating the next attempts at deflection by Lady Zhao and Shen Wanrong, the first madam calmly cut off all escape routes. To avoid accusations of coercion, I specially invited elders from the family to witness the questioning. They can testify that every word the maid spoke was the truth. My father held Xiaohe's statement with one hand, the other shaking uncontrollably. He never imagined the first madam was so capable. This woman had been quiet and reserved since entering the family. He had found her dull and hadn't pampered her much. She preferred to stay in the Buddhist hall, away from the hustle and bustle. But now, he realized that this woman, without saying a word, had already handled everything. She had seen through everything and caught the spy before the storm even started. By the time the commotion began, she had already completed the interrogation. Yet, she was patient, silent, waiting for the other side to make the first move. Now, things had escalated. Even the family elders had been invited to witness the interrogation. No matter how much he wanted to protect Lady Zhao and Shen Wanrong, he couldn't. Zhao He, terrified, kept banging her head on the ground. "Master, spare me, please." It was Lady Ronger and Lady Zhao who instructed me. They promised me 300 taels of silver once this was done. My father's face turned pale and green. He lowered his head and looked at the kneeling Lady Zhao and Shen Wanrong. Shen Wanrong was trembling like a quail, while Lady Zhao, who had seen more of the world, looked at my father with tears streaming down her face, trying to use all her acting skills. "Master, I've served you for more than 10 years. Please save me." The first madam interrupted Lady Zhao and walked directly in front of my father. "I'll ask you one thing, Master. Stealing is a serious crime, and according to the family law, it's 30 strikes with the rod. But what about framing someone?" My father looked at Lady Zhao, who was on the verge of fainting from crying, then glanced at the first madam, silent. His silence carried a hint of pleading. "Madam," my father murmured, "they did wrong, but it's not to the point of framing someone." As soon as the words left his mouth, even the servants couldn't hold back their anger. My father's favoritism towards his concubines had gone to an unforgivable extreme. I was accused of stealing, even though there was no clear evidence yet, and was about to face family law. Lady Zhao and Shen Wanrong, however, were guilty of framing me with solid evidence, and he still tried to let them off lightly. Everyone showed their disgust, but the first madam's face remained as calm as still water. She said softly, "Oh, is that what you think, Master?" Before my father could respond, the first madam had already turned away, motioning for Wu Mama to follow her out. "I had hoped to keep the family's disgrace within the house and rely on you to give a fair judgment here. But now it seems, Master, that you are so preoccupied with government affairs that you've lost sight of things in the household. If that's the case, then I will report it to the authorities." Before the words were even out, my father's face turned ashen. He shouted, "Stop her." The servants of the Shen household rushed forward, trying to block the first madam's path. However, the first madam merely raised an eyebrow, and 10 household guards immediately stepped forward, forming a protective circle around her. These were the old general's men, loyal only to the first madam, and they didn't recognize my father's authority. The regular servants, upon seeing these towering figures, instinctively stepped aside. As the first madam was about to leave the courtyard, my father had no more options. He covered his face, letting out a mournful cry. "Someone, drag Lady Zhao and that unfilial daughter down and beat them." Under the cold, moonlit sky, I sat with the first madam in the courtyard, peeling water chestnuts. From a distant courtyard came the sounds of Lady Zhao and Shen Wanrong's anguished screams. The first madam wiped her hands and said quietly, "You must be laughing at me, knowing full well I have the ability, yet all these years, I've stayed silent and lived such a humble life." I placed the peeled chestnuts into a snow-white porcelain dish. "Madam, you didn't fight because my father wasn't worth the effort." There was a moment of silence before I added, "But madam, if you truly love someone, you should fight for them." The first madam's hands suddenly stilled. The night was as cold as water, and the moonlight was soft. After a long while, I heard her let out a deep sigh. "You understand." Yes, I did understand. All these years, when I accompanied the first madam to the Buddhist temple in the outskirts of the capital, we often saw a monk there. This monk always wore a slightly worn gray robe, but his face was as breathtaking as a landscape painting. People called him Master Chen. It was said that Master Chen had once been the most outstanding young general in the capital, wearing white robes and silver armor, full of youthful vigor. He had grown up alongside the first madam, and that sword had been the token of their love, given to her by him. Yun, wait for me. When I return, I will marry you." However, during that expedition, 10,000 soldiers perished in the western regions, and the young general never returned. The first madam had considered following him in death, but in the end, she couldn't. She married, but from that point on, she was just a hollow shell, her heart as cold as dead wood. 10 years later, the young general returned. He crawled out of hell, clinging to life, hoping to see his beloved one last time. But the girl he had once loved had already married. The young general did not disturb her. Instead, he shaved his head in the Buddhist temple outside the capital and took the monastic name Chen. All of this was just rumor. I had seen the first madam meet Master Chen at the Buddhist temple with my own eyes. The two of them exchanged distant salutations, as quiet as the moon shining over the mountains, without entanglements or regrets, as if they were two indifferent passers-by. If it weren't for the rumors I had heard, no one would have guessed that they knew each other. There was only one time when the first madam fell ill, with a high fever that wouldn't subside, and all the remedies had no effect. My father was with Lady Zhao, and the maidservants went to ask him several times, but they were blocked by Lady Zhao's people. Wu Mama was sweating profusely. She grasped the first madam's hand and said, "Shall we call him? Please call him." I stood to the side, holding the medicine bowl, and in that moment, I understood who should be called. I handed the medicine bowl to Wu Mama, mounted the fastest horse, and galloped into the night, heading straight for the Buddhist temple on the outskirts of the capital. Master Chen came. He didn't enter the first madam's room. Instead, he stayed in the nearby Buddhist hall, striking the wooden fish all night. The first madam listened to the sound of the wooden fish, and gradually, she started to improve. Through a wall, she knew he was there with her. There was no need for them to meet. The same moonlight shone on them both. At this moment, under the bright moonlight, I held the first madam's hand. "Madam, some things may seem too late, but in truth, it's never too late." She gazed into the distance, lost in thought. Lady Zhao and Shen Wanrong were released after a month of confinement. My father's favoritism had gone too far. He claimed that both of them had received 30 strikes with the rod, but in reality, each strike was softened. Lady Zhao and Shen Wanrong had screamed pitifully at the time, yet within less than half a month, they had already recovered completely. When I next saw Shen Wanrong in private, she smiled arrogantly. She said, "You think just because that old woman is backing you, it will change anything? See, in the end, it's always the man who calls the shots. In this house, no one is more important than father." When this news reached the first madam, she was trimming the branches of flowers by the window. After hearing Mumama's report, she raised an eyebrow, didn't say anything, and simply reached out to cut off the most flamboyant peony bloom. She looked at the trimmed flower branch and turned to Mumama. "Forget it, throw it out. I don't even want the entire vase of flowers." Wu Mama nodded and, with a smile at the corner of her mouth, led the young maidservants to carry the flowers out. We all knew that the reason the first madam had never removed Lady Zhao all these years was that my father wasn't worth her taking action. Now, she didn't want him either. After that, things seemed to settle down. The first madam began teaching me more advanced things. She took me on inspections of the estates and shops, letting me witness how she managed the vast businesses herself. During the inspections, I was shocked to discover that the owners of these estates and shops were all the first madams, with no ties to the Shin family whatsoever. This was extremely astonishing. After all, in our dynasty, a woman's property before marriage belonged to her father or brothers, and even after marriage, no matter how much authority she had, all income would go into the family's accounts. A woman's personal property only consisted of her dowry. Yet over the course of many years, the first madam had expanded her dowry countless times, turning it into such a vast empire. I turned pale. The first madam glanced at me and sneered. "Look at your silly face. You really thought that all these years, besides reciting Buddhist scriptures, I didn't do anything worthwhile? As a woman, one must either love or make money. I have no love left. If I don't earn more, would I be a useless fool?" I hurriedly nodded in agreement, and, to my surprise, the first madam seemed to have become livelier. While I learned the secrets of wealth from the first madam, Shen Wanrong wasn't idle either. Students from the Pear Garden came and went in Lady Zhao's courtyard, and the sounds of silk and bamboo were never-ending. I knew Shen Wanrong was learning the green waist dance. She had become even more beautiful, with skin as white as snow and a figure that was graceful and soft from years of dancing. When we attended gatherings of the young masters and ladies in the capital, the young masters all praised her as the most beautiful lady in the capital. They had once been captivated by my swordplay, but quickly realized that I had a tough personality and never wanted to perform my swordsmanship for them. Shen Wanrong was different. She had many talents. She could sing, play the pipa, and dance all kinds of dances. The young master sighed. Miss Wanrong is truly talented and beautiful. I wonder who will be lucky enough to keep her in a golden house. Some even compared her to me. Both of us are from the Shen family, but this second daughter has no talent and no interest. Despite being raised by the legitimate wife, she can't even compare to the eldest daughter. Whenever this happened, Shen Wanrong would step in and say, "My sister has talents. She's good at managing accounts. Perhaps she plans to become an accountant in the future." With that, she would laugh along with the other young masters and ladies. Soon, the day of the capital's elite gathering arrived, and Shen Wanrong was determined to win. In the previous life, I copied scriptures in the Buddhist hall while you performed at the elite gathering. Since then, the young marquis has fallen for you. But this time, sister, I'm the one who can dance the green waist dance. What will you use to compete with me? I wasn't angry. I lowered my head and played with my abacus. Sister, for the sake of our sisterly bond, I'll give you one last piece of advice. Don't dance the green waist dance. Shen Wanrong raised her chin and smiled. You're afraid, aren't you? She left, feeling full of herself, and I simply shrugged silently. I warned her. She didn't listen. Well, that's no longer my concern. On the day of the elite gathering, pavilions and water pavilions were set up, with young masters and young ladies seated in the midst of them. The young marquis of the Xianping marquis household, Chu Muyuan, was among them. Dressed in black formal attire, his handsome features were captivating, yet there was an undeniable aura of bloodshed around him. Those who feared him called him the Azura King of Hell, while those who loved him would give anything just for a smile from him. My sister, Shen Wanrong, clearly belonged to the latter group. The gathering was in full swing when the sounds of silk and bamboo instruments began. Shen Wanrong, dressed in a light veil and dancing attire, appeared in the center of the pavilion. She moved gracefully, the sleeves of her gown flowing, her waist soft and flexible, and her charm undeniable. This was Lady Zhao's ultimate weapon. She had always believed that any man who saw this dance would be utterly captivated. Indeed, the young masters at the gathering displayed looks of fascination. However, gradually, as the initial excitement wore off, the young masters began to exchange glances with each other. Their gazes shifted from curiosity to shock, and finally to fear. Shen Wanrong didn't notice this shift. When the dance ended, she curtsied gracefully. This dance is called green waist. She expected loud applause, but instead, there was complete silence. Then, the first young master stood up. Apologies, I have matters to attend to. I must leave first. Another young master immediately followed. I'll go with you, brother. Soon, other young masters began leaving as well, almost as though they were racing to get away as quickly as possible. Shen Wanrong stood there, stunned. She couldn't understand what had gone wrong. Among all the young masters, Chu Muyuan was the last to leave. He sat in silence for a long while before standing up and walking towards Shen Wanrong. The usually cold and distant man showed the first hint of tenderness in his eyes. Shen Wanrong felt her heart racing. Young marquis. But in the next moment, Chu Muyuan walked past her without a glance, brushing her aside and heading straight for me, who was standing behind her. He asked, "Have we met before?" Chu Muyuan didn't remember anything from our past life. He just felt a strange sense of familiarity with me. Yet, even this small familiarity was enough to make Shen Wanrong panic, especially since she couldn't understand why the green waist dance had failed so utterly to have the effect she had anticipated. As soon as I returned to the Shun household, she grabbed me. "Is it you? Did you do something to sabotage me?" she shouted. "Did you secretly learn the green waist dance and show it to him beforehand?" She lunged at me, but just as she did, the door suddenly burst open. My father, along with a group of servants, stormed in. He pointed at Shen Wanrong, his hands trembling. "Tie this reckless girl up." Shen Wanrong was restrained by the servants. She struggled desperately, crying as she asked my father, "Father, what did I do wrong?" My father had indulged Shen Wanrong for over 10 years, and this was the first time she had seen such a terrifying expression on his face. "You still dare to ask? You still dare to ask?" My father's beard shook as his pupils widened with anger and fear. "What did you dance at the gathering?" Shen Wanrong stammered. The green waist dance. The dance she had been obsessed with for an entire lifetime. Once she learned it, she believed it would lead her to a path of love. But she didn't know. When the previous dynasty fell, the founding emperor of our current dynasty, while drunk, lamented in front of a hall of dancing maidens. The merchant women don't know the grief of a fallen kingdom. They still sing the songs of the royal harem across the river. The dance they performed was the green waist dance. Since then, this dance, so soft and seductive, so delicate and alluring, had been seen as a symbol of a fallen kingdom. In the brothels, the courtesans still performed the dance, as the emperor's drunken words had never been officially banned by the court. But Shen Wanrong was a daughter of the officials, and her actions didn't only represent herself, they involved the family's reputation and face. A daughter of the Shen family performing the green waist dance at a gathering that was supposed to celebrate poetry and literature was a huge scandal. It could have been excused in the past, but now, with the country in turmoil and war on all sides, even my father, who had spoiled her for so many years, could not protect her anymore. Shen Wanrong was locked in the family shrine for 7 days and nights. When I went to see her, she was emaciated. Her once bright and radiant eyes were now sunken, and her eye sockets were gaunt. She didn't notice me at first, murmuring to the air, "Go tell father that he's wronged me. He's wronged me." This dance was Lady Zhao's idea. If there's a problem, how could Lady Zhao not know about it? I walked in and softly said, "Perhaps Lady Zhao really didn't know. She's just a former courtesan from the brothel, who relied on her beauty and flattery to be brought into the household. But her highest role was that of a concubine who never left the house. A concubine's worldview is, after all, limited. Or maybe Lady Zhao didn't know. But she needed to take a gamble. Over the years, she's been using the Shen family's name to run some unsavory businesses. Now that she's in debt, she knows that if her actions are exposed, my father wouldn't spare her. That's why she needs you to marry into a powerful family and become her new support." Shen Wanrong stared at me, dazed. After a long moment, she shook her head, muttering to herself with disheveled hair, "No, this isn't right. In the last life, you danced too."
Why?
"Why did you get Chu Muyuan's love just for dancing the green waist dance?" I looked at her with pity. Finally, I revealed the truth, word by word. "Sister, have you ever thought about this? Chu Muyuan loved me, but it wasn't because of the green waist dance. In my past life, I didn't want to dance the green waist dance. Though I grew up under Lady Zhao's tutelage, whenever I had a chance, I would go to the academy to audit lessons. I knew everything about the green waist dance, and I understood that once I danced it, I would not only become a laughingstock in the capital, but it could also bring great harm to the entire family. But Lady Zhao forced me. She grabbed my hand and said, "Ninger, your father has brought in a new concubine. The Shun household will have no place left for us. Trust me, if you dance this dance in front of those young noblemen, someone will surely want to marry you, whether as a wife or a concubine. As long as you can still dance, we'll have at least 10 more years of good days." I still refused, but Lady Zhao kidnapped my little maidservant and threatened me with their lives. "You won't dance? Fine, living without meaning is useless. How about I kill these maidservants who've been with you for years and make your people bury you along with them?" I let Lady Zhao release the maidservants, and then, at the gathering, I danced the green waist dance. While I was dancing the green waist dance, Chu Muyuan looked at me with disdain. He believed I was someone who, in order to please men, would lower myself and degrade my own worth. It wasn't until he noticed that, after finishing the dance, I didn't speak to any of the young masters present but instead went alone to the back garden, that his perception began to change. Chu Muyuan arrived and saw the words I had written on the wall. It's not the love of the mundane world, but perhaps the mistake of a previous life. After writing down this final verse, I had already hung the white silk, intending to end this despairing life. It was then that Chu Muyuan realized the green waist dance wasn't just a simple seduction. It was a reflection of the untold pain behind it. He saved me, and then, using the power of the Xianping marquis household, he suppressed the other young masters and ladies present, ensuring that none of them would ever speak of my dance. As a token of my gratitude, I gave him the tassel I had made with my own hands. In return, he gave me the 4 treasures of the study. Later, he used that very sword on the battlefield, fighting to protect the land. I, in turn, used the 4 treasures of the study to write down my longing for him from the safety of the rear. In the end, Chu Muyuan returned victorious, and with 3 letters and 6 rights, he formally asked for my hand in marriage. The marriage proposal read, "I wish to make you my wife and bind our hearts forever." But we never did bind our hearts forever. In my past life, when Chu Muyuan returned victorious, he only found my charred remains, burnt beyond recognition by fire. That day, the undefeated Marquis of Xianping walked out of the Shun household, stumbling, his back bent like that of a dog with no home. Everyone knew that his fiancée had died, and soon, matchmakers flocked to the mansion, urging him to move on and introducing new women to him. Chu Muyuan drove them all away, then went alone to the Buddhist temple in the outskirts of the capital. The temple had 3,000 steps, and he kneeled on each step, lighting an eternal lamp. It's not the love of the mundane world, but perhaps the mistake of a previous life. Flowers bloom and fall in their time, but the ruler of the East remains. One must leave, but how should one stay? If I had mountain flowers in my hair, ask not where I returned to. Chu Muyuan suddenly began to cry. He kowtowed before the statues of the gods, again and again, begging them to save me, to give me another chance at life. His forehead bled from the repeated bows until a figure in gray appeared before him. The one-armed monk lowered his gaze and looked at him with compassionate eyes. "The greatest sorrow in the world is longing. Enough. I will grant your wish." Chu Muyuan never told me this. It was Master Chen Yi who told me. That day, he had been striking the wooden fish for the first madam all night. When he left the Shen mansion, he smiled at me as I saw him off. "Miss, my sorrow lies in parting, but the one who begged for your rebirth, his sorrow lies in death. Fortunately, you both have the chance to meet again. Please cherish this bond." Under the moonlight, Master Chen Yi clasped his hands together. He, who loved to part and could never obtain, still wished for all lovers to eventually be together. Now, I looked at the stunned Shen Wanrong and softly said, "Do you understand now?"
Sister.
The so-called singing and dancing skills, the temporary admiration they bring, but love, it is never something so simple. It requires mutual understanding and commitment. My bond with him might have started because of the green waist dance, but he fell in love with me because of who I am, not because of the dance. From the beginning to the end, the outcome never changed. He doesn't love you, not because of anything else, but simply because you are not me. But I still have to thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been adopted by the first madam, and I wouldn't have learned the story of Master Chen Yi. So, my happiness in this life is all thanks to your making it possible. Shen Wanrong went mad. In the middle of the night, she escaped from the shrine where she had been confined and went straight to Lady Zhao's quarters, strangling her. I had thought that after 2 lifetimes, the person she hated most was me. But in the end, I realized the one she truly hated was Lady Zhao. In the previous life, it was Lady Zhao who, when she came to ask for my hand in marriage at the marquis residence, went to the First Madam's courtyard to flaunt her power. She claimed she was more favored than the First Madam and that her daughter was more capable than the First Madam's daughter. Ninger danced the green waist dance I taught her, and the young marquis fell in love with her at first sight. I'm not boasting. Whoever learns this dance will be able to win any man's heart. Shen Wanrong, raised by the First Madam, overheard this and took it as truth, which became her obsession. In this life, to learn that dance, she endured all the exploitation and torment Lady Zhao had put her through since childhood. But in the end, it all turned out to be in vain. Shen Wanrong strangled Lady Zhao, her voice hoarse with rage. Lady Zhao struggled violently, cursing back at her. Useless thing. You couldn't win a man's heart and now blame me. If I had adopted Ninger back then, she would have long been married into a powerful family and brought me along to enjoy life. In their struggle, they knocked over the candle stand. The flames blazed and then extinguished. The once gilded and intricately carved room was reduced to rubble, and Lady Zhao and Shen Wanrong both perished in the fire. Just a few months later, my father had the room rebuilt, and a new concubine moved in. It was said that this new concubine was a master of kunku opera and proudly boasted, "Don't blame the master for pampering me so much. If anyone can sing the Peony Pavilion like I do, then they will surely capture the hearts of all the men." The messy affairs of the Shen household were no longer my concern. A year later, Chu Muyuan and I were formally married. On the day of our wedding, I wore my bridal gown and bade farewell to my family. The First Madam sat above us, and at that moment, she was supposed to say some formal words, like serving one's husband and showing filial piety to the in-laws. But she didn't say any of that. She was silent for a long time before finally speaking softly. "Ninger, you must be happy." That was something she hadn't received in the first half of her life. After I was sent off, the First Madam placed a prepared divorce letter in front of my father. My father was stunned. After the shock, fury set in. He roared, "Lu Jiayun, have you gone mad? The Lu family would never allow you to divorce." The First Madam nodded. "Indeed, that's true. That's why I've already gone back to the Lu family and severed ties with them." My father widened his eyes in disbelief. He couldn't fathom it. A woman divorcing her husband and cutting ties with her family. How is she supposed to survive in this world? After a long pause, my father finally understood. He pointed at the First Madam, his finger trembling. "I get it now. You think your daughter has the backing of the Xianping marquis household, so you believe you have support now, right?" The First Madam gave him a confused look. "What do I need support for? If you talk about wealth, the businesses I've built over the years are enough to keep me fed and clothed for 8 lifetimes. The Shen family and the Lu family combined don't have as much as I do. If you talk about safety," the First Madam picked up the sword that had been in her room for nearly 20 years, unsheathing it. The cold light of the blade immediately illuminated the room. "Master, instead of worrying about me, you should be worrying about yourself." The First Madam finally left the Shen household, where she had lived for more than a decade. She settled her affairs. She never wanted anything from the Shen household, but the lands and shops she had acquired were hers, and the Shen family would never touch them. My father was so enraged that he fell ill. When he finally recovered, he found the household in complete disarray. The legitimate wife was gone, and the remaining concubines were all frivolous spendthrifts. When it came to competing for his favor, they each outsmarted the others with their schemes. When it came to managing the household, they were all clueless. My father couldn't do anything about it. He considered marrying another concubine, but every reputable family in the capital had already heard of his glorious reputation for favoring concubines over his wife. No one would agree to marry their daughter into such a family. With no other option, he went back to the First Madam. "Madam, I was wrong. I regret it. I don't want to divorce you. Let's forget the past. Come back with me. From now on, you will still be the mistress of the Shen household, and no one will surpass you." The first madam was drinking tea. After a while, she poured the remaining tea onto my father's feet. This house has bad feng shui lately. It seems some evil spirits are coming in, the first madam said. Wu Mama, when you have the time, please invite a Taoist priest to perform a ritual. My father's face alternated between green and white as he tried to speak, but couldn't. He was escorted out by Wu Mama. After he left, the first madam turned to the screen behind her. All right, come out. I smiled and walked out. She shot me a look. You're getting more and more disrespectful. He's still your father, and you didn't even want to meet him face to face. You just hid here to watch him make a fool of himself. I didn't mind. Who loves me? That's my true kin. The same man who wanted to kill me over a hairpin. Whoever loves him, let them go. So, every time the day came to visit my family, I went to see the first madam and never returned to the Shun household. The first madam still lived in the cold, isolated room, where there was only an incense burner and a Buddha statue. But now I knew better. I knew that the agarwood in that burner was more precious than gold. She had always been a hidden wealthy woman, simply too lazy to show off, while the world, lacking insight, mistook pearls for mere fish eyes. The first madam washed her hands, then stood before the Buddha, burning incense. She still had that cold, indifferent look. She turned to me. Tell me about your recent situation at the marquis household. Now that I was the mistress of the marquis household, I immediately reverted to the role of a student being questioned by the teacher, not daring to slack off. I lowered my head and reported. Since I took charge of the household's finances, I've accounted for all the shops, houses, and properties. The household staff is well managed, and the few troublesome servants have been dealt with, small punishments to serve as warnings to others. Additionally, I've learned through private sources that His Majesty is about to start trade with the western regions, so I've prepared horses, tea, silk, and porcelain with my dowry, and I'm scouting locations near the official road to open an inn. The profits from these will not go into the marquis public account, but will instead serve as my foundation for the future. I believed I had done well in my report. The first madam, however, said softly, "Who asked you about all that?" I blinked. She looked at me. There was a long silence in the room. The first madam sighed. "I know you've learned all that I've taught you well. But what worries me are the things I haven't taught you." I understood. I lowered my head, my face turning red. He treats me very well. I'm happy every day when I'm with him. The first madam finally smiled in satisfaction. She had once told me that, as a woman, we must either have love or wealth. Now, I could tell her, why not be a little greedy and have both? The first madam looked toward the window, where a green jade vase held a blooming red plum blossom. Outside the window, the night grew deeper, and the moonlight was like silver. A gray-robed monk, carrying a flower hoe, brought fresh plum blossoms to her. Under the moonlight, he bowed deeply. The first madam returned the bow. Through the window and the blooming red plum, I looked into the distance and vaguely saw the spirited young men and women. When I return victorious, I will marry Yun. All right, but don't make me wait too long. In truth, waiting too long didn't matter. Because no matter how the world changes, those who love each other will always meet again. From then on, with no regrets across mountains, with water flowing together. The end.